So here's some important information we want you to remember and to be made aware of. The first is that all student assessment data must be entered by November 14th at 11:59 p.m. So all student data must be collected by this time. All the teacher scores, all the information that the teachers are collecting on the students would be submitted by November 14th by 11:59 on that date. There's a cleanup period that data managers will have an opportunity to go in and clean up those student files and the teacher information. Some of that actually should be going on prior to November 14th so that you don't have as much work to do after that window closes. And it's difficult for you to enter the student scores at that time because the window's closed for that period. So it's very important that as a data manager, you're even working on these things, in these days leading up to the 14th. Make sure that you initiate and approve all transfer requests as needed. We want you to make sure that you take care of that process and approve those that might be pending for you to go in and approve. We want to make sure that you download all your desired reports. As you see here, that generates the archive for you. It helps to create that archive so that if you ever need to go back for those records, you'll be able to do so. And then lastly, data managers will have until November 23rd, 11:59 p.m. on that day to complete this data cleanup process. So during the data cleanup, these are the kinds of things you need to make sure you take care of. The transfers, as I just mentioned, either go in and initiate or go in and approve those transfers. Student scores and data, making sure that there are scores present. You're following up with those building administrators and teachers to ensure that those scores are included and captured. We want to make sure that the teacher statuses are correct. If a teacher has moved on or is no longer part of your location, we want to make sure that they are properly set, whether that's inactive or active. Likewise, that the enrollments are correct, that they are aligned, the teacher linkages, teacher and students are linked properly. And then lastly, here we want to make sure that you're using the correct data token. The fall 2022 ELA is the data token for this year. We're going to talk specifically about POA a little bit later on, and POA stands for your point of authority. And again, in the data cleanup process, the point of authority needs to be set for your location in order to assure that you're able to view and submit the scores for those students that are attached to your location. So again, if you're using the bridge form, there are a couple of things we want to make sure that you are aware of. Certainly, you understand that there are tabs there. We want to make sure that the tab that says enter scores has scores for all the students. As a data manager, you need to be in touch with the locations to ensure that the teachers are entering scores for the students so that you don't have blanks in the areas where there should be scores. And then lastly, you have a data manager report tab, and that is the tab that as the data manager, you're going to send either to EAS or to EMIS as it relates to submitting your scores. That's where you get the data to submit. Please, data managers, do not attempt to try to change headers or anything with the form. Just collect the forms and submit the data that's inclusive in those documents. Likewise, as it relates to the K-Ready system, there are a suite of tools that you'll be using for reporting. So again, both of these tools, whether it's the bridge form or the K-Ready system, are used to submit data. And so we want to make sure that you're aware of how you can do that. So we're going to talk a lot about how you can do that in the K-Ready system, just because of the features and the functionalities that are available to you there. As you can see here on the left, we've highlighted in red all of the areas that you're going to be using. You're pretty much using the entire system when we're talking about the close down process. There are several videos that we've posted about how to use these areas, and so we'll provide you with links and information on how to access that as well. Just so that folks are aware of what is involved with the transfer process, we want to make sure that you are on top of this, because this impacts several items in the K-Ready system specific to the point of authority, and also just being able to view and access those scores for the students. So if there's a transfer that's out there lingering, then that's going to impact the point of authority and some access to those scores. So we want to make sure that these things are taken care of. So as it relates to transfers, there are two types. There's an internal transfer. That's really specific to the same district. It has to do with existing students. So these aren't new students that are coming in. When a student is uploaded to your location from another location, if it's internal, you will not have a transfer request that's triggered. This is only for those students that are external. Really, what you're going to need to do is just align that student with the teacher, with the appropriate teacher for that new location. For an external transfer, when a student is loaded with the same student ID, that is going to trigger a transfer request. As the data manager, you're going to need to select transfers and then approve or decline that transfer. You're going to need to monitor the transfers so that if there's a request that's out there that's pending, there may be a district that sent a student to your location and they're waiting on you to approve that transfer so that those scores can be transferred to your location and to your teachers. And so it's really important that as the data manager, you're monitoring this information as you go along. And then lastly here, as I just mentioned, the student data is going to be transferred and the POA assigned, but you can still collect data while a request is pending. So that's important to note. Data can still be collected on the student and entered into the Carity system. And then once that transfer is approved, the point of authority or POA then is assigned. So just want to make sure that transfers are being addressed in the system and you're not waiting or lingering. As I mentioned, there are a couple of areas where you as a data manager can be checking this. Certainly you can click on the requests from others to see who is waiting for you to approve a transfer. You can also click on your request to see where your transfers are lingering at some other location and potentially, again, kind of hunt down the data manager for that location and ask them politely if they could go ahead and approve that transfer so those scores and data can be submitted. And then you can see the transfer history between locations as well in the transfer history tab. So again, wanted to make sure that you are aware of this, that you are on top of this because it does impact some abilities to view data and access student scores in the system. So here you see kind of that process that I've just walked you through, just kind of laid out for you. You want to make sure that your student scores and data are collected, that there's no data missing. You want to make sure that the teacher status is set appropriately, whether it's active or inactive. You want to make sure that students are linked to the teachers properly so that the enrollments are correct. Again, making sure you're using the correct data collection token, which is listed here, Fall 2022 ELA. And then lastly, making sure that the point of authority or POA is assigned correctly. Again, that's impacted by a couple of factors, the least of which being the transfers situation.
What you see on the screen are the 3 different ELA reports. The first one you see is the ELA SKB rating report. This is going to show all of your students in your program with all 72 SKBs listed and any final ratings entered for those students. Everything is going to be listed in there. This is a good way to track if teachers have entered scores. So this is available both during and after the data collection. Second one you see is the data downloads report. So this report is going to show all data that has been loaded for the current ELA fall administration. And this is going to be helpful for you to check and see point of authority, if the student is active for transfers. You want to make sure that when it goes to pulling that final report, that you have the student show that you are in charge of reporting scores for. Because if you do not have the point of authority, that student will not show on that report, regardless of if that teacher had entered scores. The last report you see is the ELA Learning Progression Report. Now, this report is going to be the one that you will submit to EMIS or EAS. And this is going to have the 10 required learning progressions on that. So this is what you would use. And again, this is going to be available after the window and after the data cleanup window closes. So that data cleanup window from November 15th to November 23rd is the data cleanup window there. I do want to go live, and I'm going to show you how to pull these reports. Sign into your online K-Ready system. You want to go to administration, select reports, select the drop-down arrow next to create a report. Second one down is the ELA SKB rating report. Select your data collection. And now you do see that this is automatically checked. So filter by POA is automatically checked. When it is checked, only students whose point of authority is with your district will show on this report. When you uncheck it, this option, the data manager will see all students who have been loaded by the district, regardless of the student's point of authority. So this option is more intended for situations where students are reported by two districts or two organizations. You can keep that selected, unchecked, however you'd like. You'd also, if you wanted to check the box where it says show observation dates, this would be if a teacher entered an observation date and maybe scored at a later date. So maybe they observed and marked that they observed on that date, but then entered score a couple weeks later. But you kind of want to see that. You can always check that box as well. You select your start date as the very first day of the opening of the fall administration. Select that, hit OK. Go to your end date, which you can do as today if it's before the window. If it's after the window closes, you can always just select the actual end of the window. And so if you want to select location, this is going to provide specific buildings with ELA students. So if you have multiple buildings, if you select districts, this is going to provide results for all buildings in your district. If you select region, this is more for data managers who have multiple districts and they just want to check all of those. So we're just going to go ahead and select the district, and right next to that, we're going to select generate report. When you see it's been requested, hit close, and now you will see your SKB ratings report show up right here. You want to select download. Here is an example of the SKB ratings report. You're going to have all of the student and teacher demographic information, basically A through S. Starting on column T is where you're going to start seeing all of the SKBs and any scores that were entered. And again, you're going to see all 72. So if you're specifically looking for just those learning progressions, the 10 learning progressions, you will just narrow it down from here. As you can see, there are some scores. I have my teachers that are missing. So I'm going to want to make sure that I reach out to Lindsay and let her know that she's got some missing scores. She's got one student mostly complete, but we're going to need to make sure that by November 14th at 11:59, that scores are entered for Lindsay's student, for Jasmine's, and for the sample teacher here. All of those need to be entered. That's one way of checking. So now let's go back to reports, and I want to show you how to pull the data downloads report. So we are going to select the drop-down, go down to the very bottom. So it's system reports. So this is going to show, like I say, any data that was uploaded, student, teacher, enrollment data for the current admission, or for assessment window. So you're going to select your download type. For this particular example I want to show you for point of authority is I want to look at enrollments. And I want to select the data collection, and we're going to select the fall ELA. And again, the region is if you have multiple, district is if you have multiple buildings and you want to look at all of them, or if you want to look at a specific location. So I'm actually just going to do, again, is the district and request that and hit close. So you want to give it a minute. If it doesn't populate and download by then, you just want to hit refresh or F5, either way. Download that report. And once this opens, you're going to see, again, basically like your enrollment file. It's going to be part student information and then part teacher information. So you can see what teacher was attached to those students. So you're looking at whether the student is active or not. And again, if a student is active, that means they are attached to a teacher. If you remove that teacher from the student, they then become inactive. So if, let's say, Shelby here was a no, as active, then you know that this is going to be blank. There would be no teacher attached to that student. So you'd want to double check that. As for the point of authority, so let's say Scooby here, this is still marked as no. That means that that transfer never went through, that the transfer has not been accepted by the previous district or organization. So you'll want to reach out to them and make sure that you ideally have yeses for students that are yours in that column. Again, this is a great way to double check and make sure, because after the cleanup window, you will not have the opportunity to do that because it will be over. So you would need to then reach out to that previous district and possibly have them send you those scores. All right, and then the very last one I want to show you is the learning progression report. And again, this is the one you will be submitting for EMIS. And if you select your drop down and go to the very first one, now the data collection will be here. Again, you do not want to pull this until after the data cleanup window, and you would select that data collection. And then from there, you can select filter by point of authority and select your district, or if you wanted to do multiple regions, you would do that. And again, this is the one that you would be submitting to EMIS or EAS. So currently, the reporting requirements for ODE and non-public and JFS licensed programs are for those ECE funded children and children receiving PSE services. So to meet the requirement of only 10 learning progressions are needed to successfully report. EMIS and EAS are the two main data warehouse systems that are used to collect the ELA data. Now, programs serving children funded by the Early Childhood Education, the ECE, or the Preschool Special Education, the PSE, are required to complete the ELA and report scores for the fall and the spring administration windows. All programs may use the ELA, but only ODE licensed and non-public and ODJFS licensed programs are required to report on the ELA. These programs must report the 10 learning progressions on the ECE funded children and the PSE children, both to EMIS and to EAS. The ELA reporting requirement document is a very helpful tool that will actually help you learn where to report your ELA data. And then the EMIS and the EAS reporting. EMIS reporting dates are found on the EMIS calendar. There is a hyperlink with that, and you'll see that in your notes as well. And now fall assessment data collections. Now they're open now to March 31st. Now again, the window hasn't closed, so you're not going to be reporting anything until after the cleanup window. And that's going to be open until March 31st for the fall administration. But please note though, EMIS reporting dates may change at any time, so kind of keep an eye on that. Now, EAS reporting dates and directions are found on the FY23 grantee manual. And those reports fall assessment data, that's due by January 15th, 2023.
I'm going to go ahead and talk about missing student scores. So as a reminder, with the early learning assessment, there are 9 level descriptors, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, A, B, C, D. Those level descriptors represent the typical milestones of a child's development. Sometimes a teacher is unable to determine a score for any of those SKBs for a child. When a teacher is unable to determine a score, and there could be various reasons for that, the teacher might enter N for not scoreable, or NE for not yet evident if they're using the K-Ready system. So this is an example of the bridge form. In the bridge form, there's the N option for not yet evident. In the K-Ready system, there's 2 different ones, N or NE. And we talk about those scoring options in the training with teachers. Now, a score of an N, though, any in the bridge form or in the K-Ready system, it will be calculated at the learning progression level as an N as well. So if any of the SKBs in a learning progression have an N or NE rating, then the learning progression level that you report into EMIS or EAS, that will be calculated with an N for the overall learning progression. When you are submitting your assessment data to EMIS or EAS, you cannot enter an N. That's not a valid score. So you actually have to use a reason code. We have a list of allowable reason codes and an explanation of what they mean, and they're found in the EMIS manual for assessments. Now, those reason codes, they have different meanings, and you will have to probably talk to the teachers if needed to find out, why does this child have an N? What is the reason for why this child has an N? So when you're reporting again in EMIS or EAS, you'll have to put a reason code if any of the learning progressions have an overall rating of an N. There's a reason code, allowable reason codes in the EMIS manual. The EAS manual also has some information about their guidance. For the programs using the bridge form, which I saw during the poll, there are still some programs out there using the bridge form. If you're using the bridge form or even the K-Ready system, there's nothing right now that allows the teacher to put in an explanation about why the score is an N. So locally, you'll need some sort of internal communication process with the teachers to find out, okay, why does this student have an N? And then you can match that to the appropriate reason code for EMIS or EAS. You will only need to use one reason code for any of the N's. If the teacher, for whatever reason, has not been able to collect the necessary evidence to determine a rating for one or more SKBs before the window closes, that teacher should leave those SKBs blank in the K-Ready system. Okay, so, and again, a blank is also going to then make that overall learning progression rating an N. But again, you cannot report an N in EMIS. So EMIS coordinators are familiar with reporting star, star, star anytime there is a missing score or if there's a score of an N. So for any of these, if there's a score of N, you're going to report star, 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 and you're going to put in the reason code. There is one specific reason code, F as in Frank. That's the reason code that we recommend that you use if no other valid reason code applies.
Lastly, I want to go over is the ELA timeline for the fall 2022 session here. So August 15th, again, was the open date of the ELA, is when that opened. November 14th at 11:59 p.m. is when the ELA fall data window closes. So no scores can be entered after that time. The data manager cleanup window is going from November 15th to November 23rd. And again, this is going to be for data managers to clean up their transfers, make sure that they have accepted any transfers, or if they need to trigger another transfer to the previous district, they want to do that then. This is also a time to clean up any student demographic data. So for instance, maybe you just did a required fields upload and then didn't put all of the other information for those students. So you'll want to either do that manually or again, do a all fields student template and update your students. And then lastly is early December is when the learning progression report is going to be available for you guys then to download and submit again by the close for that assessment window.
So again, want to just touch bases quickly here on supports, just to make sure you know what's available to you. As always, the Ohio Department of Education's website is a great place for data managers, assessment managers. There's a section there specifically for you. And again, it's going to provide you some additional detail the links to those reporting guides are located there as well. And again, just some policy information kinds of things would be there for you to be able to respond to questions that you might get from teachers or administrators as it relates to the how you do the assessment administration. And so I want to make sure that we highlight that and make you aware that that is a great location for you to go to for those kinds of resources. In addition to that, we have the help desk support site. The primary purpose of that is to provide you with support around the technical issues that you might be facing. We answer all kinds of questions and respond to those requests that come from the field. So we want to make sure that you are aware of that. You see here the link to the site as well as the phone number should you have questions. We know that the assessment window is closing on Monday. And so, if you have if you have questions or need support or an issue that you need addressed, please make sure you reach out to us prior to that window closing for you on Monday. I want to show you a couple of things about the support site very, very quickly here. If you're on the page and you click the Ready for Kindergarten Online System Support, it'll bring you to the main page here. And scroll down, you'll see a button just for you as a data manager. As you click Data Manager Support. And then here we've kind of sectioned this page for you. These things at the very top of the page are things that you need to know at the beginning of the window. And then later on here in the middle of the page, you see what happens as you're managing the assessment. So the kinds of things that happen during the middle of the assessment. And then as we get towards the end here, information about the reports. As I mentioned to you before, when Carissa was presenting and when I was sharing what I shared, I indicated that there are different support resources out there that kind of walk you through some of the things that we've been talking about here in detail. As you know, we can't go into very much detail on this webinar because we're kind of constrained to an hour. Just again, to be respectful of your time, you want to make sure that people are aware of that. We are also exploring maybe expanding the webinar so that we have more time for Q&A, but we want to make sure that we are respectful of your time. I mentioned that to say that those things that we covered that you might need to go back to, you can find those resources here as well. So I want to point to a couple of those. Even just at the very top here, we talk about transfers. Here are a couple of videos that talk about internal transfers and external transfers. If you click on this About Transfers link, it's going to open up a support resource for you and again give you a little bit more detail about the transfers process. So I just wanted to make sure that you are aware that there are resources there in case we've gone a little bit too fast during the session and you may have some questions about the information. Also wanted to point out that there are videos that we've posted here about ELA specifically and the K-Ready system, generally speaking. So we want to make sure that you can get to these resources, that you know that they're there. Also, if you need support, if you click on this Request Support button here, it will open up a window and allow you to kind of search for your location. So I'm going to just search for Columbus here and click Go. It'll pull up several locations and then I can find my specific location for Columbus and click Submit Request, and then a Submit a Request window will open up where you can type in your information and send that to our team and someone will respond to you. Just again, want to make sure that you're aware of where you can get this information and get your questions answered and get access to the support information. As an EMIS coordinator, not a data manager, I wait until after the cleanup period ends to import the results into our student data, correct? And the answer to that is yes, that is correct. You want to wait until all of that cleanup is completed and the data manager submits the final information to you before you upload anything. So yes, that is correct.
Because there are some learning progressions where in the fall, you might find that more students have an overall N rating specifically the phonological awareness. It does happen because some of those skills don't start happening until a little bit later in the child's development. And so some of the SKBs in there might be rated not yet evident by the teacher, which then turns the overall learning progression into an N. Now, if it's a not, or if it's an N not scorable, the child is unable to access the type of skill or be able to do that, the teacher can choose N. If you look at this table, we've pulled out the valid reason scores from EMIS, and then the second page is EAS, but both of them have an S as in sailor. That's my the S down at the bottom you'll see is for a non-scorable item. So the question that we had, if like a medical reason, parent refusal, suspect, those, and even the F, if it doesn't align to when a student isn't yet performing at a level, and so the overall rating is an N, or the child is unable to access it, you can use S. You can use reason code S. That's allowable. Over the next few months, as you're generating your scores after the cleanup window, don't try to generate your scores until we've told you now you can get your learning progression score report. Wait until after the cleanup window, then you'll be able to get your learning progression reports. If you share students with other districts, there are ways that you can do that. Just make sure that you both have loaded the student in the enrollment. And to the question about the school psychologist, can they be listed as the teacher? That is all local decision. The teacher has to have the account. Teachers who are providing ratings must have successfully completed the training, the ELA training. You will actually get an idea of any ends by looking at your SKB report. So if you pull your SKB report right now and look at the SKBs to see what kind of scores teachers are entering, if there are blank SKBs in any of those 24 required that roll up into the 10 required learning progressions, any blanks, any Ns, any NEs, that's going to roll up to an overall N when after the 14th, when all the scores are generated for the learning progression. ELA training is about over for the fall. So we'll resume in the winter or early spring. More than likely it'll be winter, but later winter.
Do you have information about upcoming ELA training? They have some questions. Do you want them to reach out to the ELA at elahelp@education.ohio.gov?
Yes, thank you.
Regarding the LP reports, it says here, you mentioned don't pull LP report until after window closes, but isn't that where we will find any ends being reported that need to be addressed? Actually, no. You should download the SKB reports. That will list all of the scores that the teachers have submitted for students, and you'll see the indication there in the SKB reports.
Is I have an active student who on the data downloads enrollment report has no under POA. We don't have any transfer requests pending. And when we look at the student in the system, I am unable to click on the POA tab. How do we become the POA? By doing this, what you'll want to do is do a student file upload. You can do a required fields. When you do that, it's going to trigger another transfer request. That will go to the previous district, and from there, it is up to them to approve or deny the transfer. So you'll want to keep up on that. But again, you want to at least trigger that transfer again, and it's you triggering it. So you just do a quick student file upload with just required fields. That's going to trigger the transfer request to the previous district.
And I'm going to answer another question live here. There's a question asking, what does the score NE mean? And so you see here at the very top of the page that NE means not yet evident. The child has not reached the earliest level on the item or progression. So just want to make sure that well, I tried to highlight that. Want to make sure that you are taking a look at this document. It does provide some very good detail about those scores and the reason codes associated with them.